A normal house is built where it stands. Workers arrive. Concrete is poured. Walls go up. Electricians run wires. Plumbers install pipes. Windows are fitted. Bathrooms are tiled. Painters arrive. Then somebody discovers a measurement is wrong, a delivery is late, rain stops the job, or one trade is waiting for another. Weeks become months. Months become a year. That is how most of the world still builds homes. China is trying something completely different. Move the house into a factory. Not the furniture. Not just the walls. The house. Inside new Chinese modular construction plants, concrete floors, ceilings, walls, insulation, plumbing, electrical systems, bathrooms, and interior finishes are being produced on industrial lines with robots, digital tracking, and millimeter-level tolerances. At one intelligent production line in Jinan, China State Construction says a wall panel can be manufactured in about 12 minutes and a complete housing unit in around 2 hours. At a smart construction park in Shenzhen, one fully integrated concrete module can roll off the line roughly every 20 minutes. And in a real housing project near Guangzhou, each home is divided into 8 large factory-made modules. A crane can place one module in around 30 minutes. The entire house can be assembled on site in roughly 4 hours. 4 hours. That does not mean an empty field becomes a finished neighborhood before lunch. Foundations still have to be prepared. The modules still have to be manufactured. Utilities still need connection. Inspections still matter. Transport still matters. But the part of construction that usually happens slowly, trade by trade, in mud, dust, wind, and rain, is being moved onto an assembly line. China is beginning to build houses the way the auto industry builds cars. And that changes almost everything. Speed, labor, waste, quality control, cost, and even what it means to export a building. Because China is no longer only shipping steel, cement, or construction machinery overseas. At ports in Guangdong, cranes are loading what look like giant shipping containers onto ships. But many of those containers are not cargo boxes. They are rooms, complete rooms, walls already finished, pipes already inside, bathroom fixtures already installed. Ship them across an ocean. Stack them at the destination. Connect them together. And a hotel, apartment block, school, or home starts appearing. Chinese customs data reported that exports of prefabricated buildings jumped sharply in the first quarter of 2026. This is becoming an industry. And if you like stories where something ordinary suddenly starts being manufactured in a completely different way, hit like and subscribe. Because the craziest part of this story is not that China can assemble a house in hours. It is that the construction site may eventually stop being the place where most of the house is built. To understand why that matters, look at how inefficient traditional construction can be. Imagine building a car the same way we build a house. You deliver thousands of individual parts to an empty parking lot. Then mechanics, electricians, welders, painters, and glass installers arrive on different days. Some work outside in the rain. Some wait because another team has not finished. Parts sit exposed to weather. Every vehicle is assembled in a slightly different environment. Measurements are repeated by hand. And when one supplier is late, the whole car waits. Nobody would design a modern automobile factory that way. Cars are made inside controlled buildings. The floor is level. Tools are exactly where workers expect them. Robots repeat the same movement. Parts arrive in sequence. Quality is measured at each station. Problems are found before the vehicle reaches the customer. China's modular construction push asks a simple question. Why should houses be different? A house is larger than a car. Every site is different. Building codes are complicated. Foundations depend on the land, but much of the house itself is repetitive. Every bedroom needs walls. Every bathroom needs pipes. Every kitchen needs electrical circuits. Every ceiling needs finishing. Every room has dimensions that can be designed digitally before anybody touches a tool. So modular construction separates the problem into two pieces: the site and the product. Prepare the site like construction. Manufacture the building like industry. At the smart modular factories being built by Chinese construction groups, A room can be broken into 6 basic pieces: a floor, a ceiling, 4 walls. Instead of waiting for one crew to finish the floor before the next crew starts the walls, those components can be manufactured in parallel. Robotic arms move materials. Automated vehicles carry components between stations. Welding or reinforcement work happens in controlled positions. Pipes and electrical routes are installed before the walls are hidden. Interior surfaces can be completed before the module leaves the plant. Then the 6 pieces become a 3-dimensional room. That room can already contain the parts that normally bring half a dozen trades onto a construction site. This is what makes the 20-minute module figure so interesting. It does not mean a person can live inside a new house every 20 minutes. It means the production line can create integrated building modules at a rhythm that begins to look much more like manufacturing than traditional construction. One Chinese smart factory says it can produce between 20,000 and 30,000 concrete modules a year. Another automated steel modular line in Huizhou stretches for more than 400 meters and can produce around 50 units a day. Its engineers say that is roughly 10 times the output of comparable factories in North America. The line works with tolerances of about 1 to 2 millimeters, 1 or 2 millimeters, on a product large enough to become a room. That precision matters. Traditional construction has always depended heavily on skilled workers compensating for imperfect conditions. A wall is slightly off. A pipe is moved. A cabinet is adjusted. A gap is filled. Good builders are extremely good at making messy realities fit together. Factory construction tries to remove some of that mess before it exists. If the digital model says the pipe belongs here, the factory installs it here. If the window opening must be this size, machines repeatedly create that size. Every module receives an identification code. Production data can follow it through the line. When the module reaches the building site, engineers know where it came from, what was installed inside it, and where hidden pipes or cables are located. The building gets something almost like a manufacturing record. That is a very different philosophy from a wall being closed up and everyone hoping the drawings still match what workers actually built. The best example is happening in Jingshia village in Guangzhou's Huangpu district. China State Construction and its technology subsidiaries have been rebuilding hundreds of rural homes there using modular systems. Instead of constructing each house traditionally on its individual plot, the project established a mobile factory close to the village. The homes are designed around standardized modules, but standardized does not mean every family has to live in an identical box. Different layouts and finishes can be selected. The factory manufactures the structural shell, insulation, mechanical and electrical systems, interior components. Then the modules travel a short distance to the site. A single home uses 8 of them. The crane lifts one module. Workers position it. Around 30 minutes. Next one. 30 minutes. Again. Again. 8 modules later, roughly 4 hours have passed and the main house is assembled. The modules are then permanently connected and anchored. The home still has to be commissioned and finished as a complete building, but compare that with building the structural and interior systems piece by piece on site. The project says the modular method cuts total construction time by around 40%. Labor demand can fall by about 60%. Construction waste can fall by around 70%. Those are project figures, and they will not automatically apply to every modular house in every country. But the reason behind them is easy to understand. A factory can order material in exact dimensions. Offcuts can be collected in one place. Concrete and steel are handled repeatedly by the same equipment. Workers do not need to carry every piece through an unfinished building. And bad weather has much less power over the schedule. Rain can stop roof work. Rain does not stop a robot working inside a factory. If this is giving you a different picture of construction, subscribe, because this is where the story goes from fast houses to something much bigger. China is trying to turn buildings into exportable manufactured products. At Dongguan Port, modular units leave China looking almost like oversized containers. That is intentional. Transportation is one of the hardest parts of modular construction. Make a room too wide and it becomes expensive to move. Make it too tall and it cannot pass under bridges. Make it impossible to stack and shipping costs explode. So modular builders design around logistics. The finished structure may be large. The pieces have to behave like cargo. Steel modular buildings are especially attractive for overseas work because steel structures can be relatively light for their strength. Modules can leave a Chinese factory with walls, floors, ceiling, plumbing, and bathroom fittings already installed. At the destination, construction becomes assembly. Chinese modular units are already going to projects in Australia, North America, the Middle East, and other regions. In Australia, Chinese-made modules have been used for apartments where the project reportedly needed less than half the normal site labor and compressed a process that could have taken years into a matter of months. There is also a much more consumer-friendly version of this industry: foldable houses. One recent Chinese report described a buyer in Perth looking at a 70-square-meter prefabricated house that arrived folded, then opened into a bedroom, living area, kitchen, and bathroom within hours. The quoted factory price was about 12,500 Australian dollars. Local builders had quoted her more than 100,000. That comparison sounds insane, but it needs a giant warning label. The factory price of a modular house is not the final cost of living in that house. Land is separate. Shipping is separate. Cranes may be separate. Foundations are separate. Permits are separate. Electrical and water connections are separate. Local engineering approval can be separate. Taxes and import duties may apply. And some extremely cheap online modular home prices exclude so much of the final project that comparing them directly with a completed traditional house can be misleading. Still, the gap is large enough that buyers are paying attention. And China's exports of prefabricated buildings rose by 45% in the first quarter of 2026, according to official trade data. That tells us this is more than a viral folding house video. Foreign customers are buying. Why? Because housing has a brutal problem in many countries. It takes too long to build. It costs too much. There are not enough skilled workers. And every delay increases financing costs. If a developer borrows money to build 100 apartments, that money costs interest while the project sits unfinished. Finish months earlier and the economics change before you save a single dollar on concrete. Construction speed is money. That is one reason modular systems have attracted attention for hotels, student housing, hospitals, and worker accommodation. Those buildings contain lots of repeated rooms. One hotel room looks a lot like the next. One dormitory room looks like the next. One hospital bathroom can share dimensions with hundreds of others. Repetition is exactly what factories love. The more standardized the product, the more manufacturing can optimize it. The hardest balance is standardization versus choice. People do not want identical boxes, so the factory has to standardize the hidden building blocks without making every finished home look the same. At Jingshia, residents can choose layouts and interior options, while some homes add smart systems and rooftop solar. That is closer to Lego than a shipping container. Standardized pieces, different final homes. Then there is the biggest concern: safety. When people hear that a house is assembled in 4 hours, the natural reaction is not admiration. It is suspicion. What corners did they cut? That question is fair. Fast construction can be dangerous if speed becomes more important than engineering. China itself has experienced serious building quality scandals over decades of rapid development. So modular construction does not deserve automatic trust simply because it happens in a factory. The modules still need correct reinforcement, correct concrete, correct welding, correct fire protection, correct waterproofing, correct connections, correct foundations. The joints between modules are especially important because the finished building has to behave as one structure under wind, earthquakes, and normal loads. This is one reason the modern Chinese modular industry emphasizes standardized testing and traceability. Factory work can potentially improve quality control because inspectors can see parts before they disappear behind walls. Production steps can be repeated. Digital records can be stored. A defective module can be rejected before it reaches the site. But factories can also repeat mistakes at enormous scale. If one traditional builder makes one bad connection, one house may have a problem. If a factory's design contains a bad connection and the line repeats it 10,000 times, the mistake becomes industrial too. Manufacturing increases consistency. It does not guarantee that what is being consistently manufactured is correct. Building codes still matter. Independent inspection matters. Long-term performance matters. And imported modular houses face another problem. A building approved in China is not automatically approved in Australia, Canada, Europe, or the United States. Wind loads differ. Snow loads differ. Earthquake requirements differ. Electrical standards differ. Fire codes differ. Accessibility rules differ. Even the dimensions of stairs can differ. So the dream of building one universal house in Shenzhen and shipping it anywhere on Earth runs into a wall of local regulation. That is probably good. Homes are not phones. If a phone fails, you replace it. If a 10-story building fails, people die. The future of modular housing will therefore depend on factories learning to manufacture to different national standards as efficiently as electronics factories manufacture different plug types and radio configurations. China's giant construction companies are already moving in that direction because their modular systems are being used for more than ordinary homes, schools, hotels, hospitals, high-rise apartments, industrial buildings, even structures in polar environments. The same industrial logic can move from a village house to a 30-story tower, and China has been experimenting with extreme assembly speed for years. Back in 2021, Broad Group attracted worldwide attention by erecting a 10-story apartment building in Changsha in 28 hours and 45 minutes. The trick was not that workers somehow poured 10 floors of concrete overnight. The building modules had already been manufactured. They arrived at the site sized for ordinary road transport. Cranes stacked them. Workers unfolded floors and walls, bolted modules together, connected electricity and water, and completed the main assembly in just over 1 day. Years earlier, Broad had demonstrated similar speed with other prefabricated buildings. Those projects looked like stunts. And in one sense they were. Nobody needs every house on Earth built under a stopwatch. The important thing was what the stunt proved. Once enough work moves into the factory, the construction site stops being the bottleneck. The building can arrive almost finished. Modern Chinese modular systems are taking that spectacle and making it less spectacular. That is actually more important. A one-off building assembled in 28 hours makes a viral video. A factory producing a module every 20 minutes makes an industry. And the industry is becoming more automated. Robots can plaster around 70 square meters of wall in 20 minutes on one Chinese modular line, work that may take a human crew much longer. Automatic vehicles move heavy components. Machine vision can check dimensions. Digital twins allow engineers to build the house virtually before the physical module begins. If two pipes collide in the digital model, the problem can be fixed before anyone pours concrete. That is a huge contrast with traditional construction, where design conflicts are sometimes discovered after the wall is already standing. Then, every module can receive a digital identity. Scan it. See when it was produced. See what materials went inside. See where hidden utilities are located. That becomes useful years later, when the owner wants to repair something. Imagine drilling into a wall, and the building itself can tell you exactly where the electrical cable runs. That is the long-term promise of industrialized construction. Not simply faster, more knowable. And China has a reason to push hard. Its property market has changed dramatically. The era of building endless conventional apartment towers at any cost is over. The construction industry needs higher productivity. The workforce is aging. Environmental rules are tightening. Cities are renovating old housing instead of only expanding outward. Modular systems can attack several of those problems at once. One Beijing renovation project replaced aging apartments using 156 standardized modules. More than 90% of structural work, insulation, pipes, and interior finishing was completed in a factory. On-site, the modules were installed in 46 days. The project reported roughly 75% shorter construction time, 75% less construction waste, and 30% lower carbon emissions compared with its traditional baseline. Again, those figures belong to that specific project. But they show why policymakers and builders care. Renovating a neighborhood is miserable for residents. Noise, dust, blocked roads, workers, months or years of disruption. Move work into a factory and the neighborhood experiences assembly instead of the entire manufacturing process. Factories can also cut waste because material is measured, stored, and reused in one controlled place instead of being scattered across hundreds of sites. More importantly, every production problem becomes a lesson the next module can benefit from. That is the same learning effect that made automobile factories so productive, and it points toward the biggest question in this story. Could houses eventually become consumer products? Not completely. You will never buy a home exactly like you buy a refrigerator. Land makes every house local. Infrastructure makes every house local. Planning permission makes every house local. But the physical building could become much more like a product. Choose size. Choose facade. Choose kitchen. Choose insulation level. Choose smart home package. Choose solar. Choose interior finish. Factory schedules production. Modules leave the line. Trucks arrive. Crane assembles. That is much closer to ordering a car than hiring a traditional builder. And if that happens, construction companies change too. They stop behaving only like contractors. They become manufacturers. Factories become intellectual property. Production software becomes valuable. Supply chains become strategic. And countries that can make buildings efficiently can export not only workers or raw material, but finished architecture. That may be the most important thing China is building here. A new export category. Not cement, not steel, not cranes. Buildings. Entire rooms crossing oceans. Bathroom already inside. Wiring already hidden. Walls already painted. The destination becomes the final assembly plant. This is why the house factory idea fits the larger pattern we keep seeing in Chinese industry. Take something traditionally made slowly. Standardize it. Move it indoors. Automate repetitive steps. Digitize the process. Scale production. Then export the result. China did this with electronics, solar panels, batteries, electric vehicles, appliances. Now, parts of the construction industry are trying the same logic on houses. It will not replace traditional construction everywhere. Luxury custom homes are not ideal factory products. Complex urban sites still need enormous amounts of conventional work. Renovation can be too irregular. Transportation limits module size. Local codes fragment the market. And the upfront investment in a modular factory is huge. A normal contractor can buy equipment as projects arrive. A factory needs enough continuous orders to keep the line busy. An idle house factory is an expensive warehouse. That creates a chicken and egg problem. You need lots of demand before you build the factory. You need the factory before you can offer the lowest cost. China's scale helps solve that. A single large construction group can feed projects into multiple plants. Public housing can create stable demand. Hotels and schools create repetition. Exports add another market. And as factories gain volume, their economics improve. That is why the numbers coming out of China now matter more than the old viral construction videos. One housing unit in 2 hours on an intelligent production line. One integrated module every 20 minutes. 50 steel modules a day from a 400-meter automated factory. 20 to 30,000 modules a year from one concrete modular plant. A full 8-module rural house assembled on site in around 4 hours. Those are manufacturing numbers, not construction numbers. And once homes start being described in units per hour instead of months per project, something fundamental has changed. Take a step back. For thousands of years, building a home meant bringing materials to a place and shaping them there. Stone to the site, timber to the site, bricks to the site, concrete to the site, workers to the site. The location was the factory. China is separating those two ideas. The land is still the land, but the house can be manufactured somewhere else, inside a controlled building, by robots and workers following a digital design. Then transported like an enormous appliance. That is why the 4-hour house is not really about 4 hours. The number is a symbol. It tells you how little work is left once the factory has done almost everything else. And if this model keeps scaling, the future construction site may look strangely empty. A prepared foundation, a crane, a few trucks, a small assembly crew. Module 1, Module 2, Module 3. By sunset, something that looked like cargo in the morning looks like a home. If this video gave you something new to think about, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We go deep on the machines, factories, and technologies that are changing ordinary things in ways most people never see coming. And here is the question I want to leave you with. If a factory can make a housing unit in 2 hours, produce modules every 20 minutes, and assemble a complete house in 4 hours, what happens to an industry still organized around building almost everything by hand on site? Maybe China has not invented a faster way to build houses. Maybe it is slowly turning the house itself into a manufactured product. And once that happens, construction may never work the same way again.